Welcome to Expedient Means with Lin Wei on TMRN Radio. Lin currently resides in China and is the founder and head teacher of Guizhen Philocultural Society. He has extensive experience in Buddhist and Taoist meditation, Qigong, martial arts, and traditional Chinese medicine. To learn more about Lin, please visit his website at www.guizhenhui.net. Tonight, Lin will be speaking about cultivating the way, understanding enough.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Expedient Means on TMRN Radio. I'm Lin Wei, and today we're going to be discussing an article I wrote. Basically, I'll be doing a reading about an article I wrote, and I will be throwing in some new ideas along the way. The article is called Cultivating the Way, Understanding Enough. It can be taken from a viewpoint of a cultivator's lifestyle. It could be taken from a viewpoint of a non-cultivator's lifestyle. Basically, the ideas in here are letting us understand a little bit about the modern ideas of having and not having. So when we think about or contemplate some of the points here in this article, we can utilize them, perhaps, as a way to guide us on our path of cultivation and or just our regular everyday lifestyle. If those in the world were able to put down their greed, put down the ideas of an ego, of their self, or the idea of a self, it would be a much more pleasant place to live. But pleasant, I mean in the relative sense, not in the overall scheme of things. Because in the overall scheme of things, relativity doesn't really exist. And why do I say that? Because when we see the green on the trees throughout the year, and then come the fall, the autumn time, the leaves start to change colors and wither away and die. That is relativity. Sometimes we have a happy time, a happy day. Sometimes we have a unhappy day. That's relativity. The overall scheme of things, there is neither those things. It is our mind and the views we attach to, basically our false thinking mind, that allows us to create notions of good and bad and whatnot. Our false thinking mind allows us to cover up what is actually happening, and we like to sugarcoat things. So on one hand, the sugar tastes so good, but on the other hand, it's not very good for you. So with this article, hopefully there will be some type of ideas that may help a cultivator or a non-cultivator. Ancient sages always spoke about simplicity for their times. The people then must have been as materialistic as those of our times now to have sages expound teachings which point to one's own nature and simplicity. I mean, sometimes we would have to think to ourselves, is our time now, in our modern world, much different from those of the past, the quote-unquote uncivilized world? I mean, if we're going to talk modern and speak of its actual meaning, then would it be anything new that society utilizes? So 1,000 years ago, whatever society utilized was modern to the time before 1,000 years ago, and so on and so forth. So modern really is just a perception. If we were to investigate that idea, then we would find that we haven't changed one bit. Whatever we are experiencing now has always been that way. Interesting, right? That the same emotions were felt by the same types of people for thousands and thousands of years. Hasn't changed. Greed hasn't changed. Just the way one goes about it, perhaps, has changed only because of the tools they use. Most people use technology. Most people use more formulative methods of speech. So, the general foundation of what we experience has never changed. Or what we assume to experience has not changed. Love has not changed. Hate has not changed. Killing has not changed. Sleeping has not changed. Things haven't changed from our so-called ancient times to our now modern times. It hasn't changed at all. In today's world, simplicity bears many explanations. To the quote-unquote modern mind, simplicity is a home with electricity, gas, heat, hot water, appliances to cook, TV, a couch, bed, maybe a computer and a telephone, or just a cell phone. Then there's the simplicity for the luxury seekers. Fancy and expensive cars, 4 to 7 bedroom homes, clothing, no cheaper than a few $1,000s, and whatever modern appliances that they can find that just make their lives ultra simple. Perhaps a maid, a butler, and then these extravagant vacations, etc., etc., etc. So the more money you have, the more you spend, or the conditions to spend more money arise. The less money you have, well, you can only spend so much, and the conditions for you to spend only so much arise. But it's not that simple either, because sometimes our greed, our wanting, makes us spend more than we have. And that's called debt. And what happens when we go into debt? We become slaves to the debt, to the companies who lent us money through our credit cards. Because that's what we truly have now in our world, is a society based on debt. That means we have a slave society. A society where people are working for the corporations. And we would say the corporations are bad, and the corporations are this and that, and sure, they're all that, and they're all other things too. But they never put a gun to your head telling you to buy a, 60-inch screen TV, or a $100,000 car, or buy a house that is way too expensive than you can ever afford in this lifetime. See, the corporations don't do that. But the methods used to get people to believe that they should need these things allow the person to do that. And though it's the corporation that put out certain media type things, the people still agree. Sometimes they agree against their own will. It's called brainwashing or mind control. Oh, we have it. It's out there. Oh, definitely. But you can't blame 100% the host of the mind control on the people who actually sit there and eat it up. They themselves, the people themselves, have attached and become so absorbed in their own views that it's just all too easy. The struggle to awaken has become harder and harder. But actually, it has always been the way it has been, and always been the way it is now, except for one small difference. The intensity of the methods, the intensity of the tools, the intensity of the frequencies used to get people to do certain things. Now, one can say they have a strong mind, sure. But that's only on the peripheral. That's the false thinking mind. There's a conscious mind. Well, I have a strong mind. No one could take advantage of me. Sure. But put on a TV commercial, put on the radio, and what do we have? A full onslaught of influence. A full onslaught of various frequencies trying to find the best way to get into the mind and take your afflictions or take your attachments and throw them around like a windstorm and make you grasp. So, simplicity, for those who barely have, basically those who are not financially abundant or do not have much money or nothing at all in the sense of finances, The idea of enough is quite interesting. A place to sleep, some sort of food stuff to fill the belly, shoes, warm clothing for the winter months, and maybe a covering over the body. Maybe a blanket or a house. Or just because you have a house doesn't mean you're rich. Or doesn't mean you have enough money at all. Those seeking modern basic simplicity things, it's almost still luxurious to the person who doesn't have those things. And the ones seeking rich luxuries or luxurious things, the luxurious idea is still, one would find that to be luxurious also, even when they're rich. So let's say I have $1 million and I live pretty well in a gigantic house. But the person who has 1.5 million will have just a slightly bigger house and a little bit higher technological things or toys to play with than I do. Then what? I would say, wow, they have a lot of money. That's a little too luxurious for me, right? The more money you have, the more you end up spending. And usually end up spending on much more expensive things. I have a friend here who bought a 10,000 renminbi flower pot. And I actually had the reaction of my mouth dropping, and I looked at him like, are you crazy? But that's what his lifestyle is like. 10,000 renminbi flower pot. What would that be in US dollars, so people will have a better idea about what I'm talking about here? Let's see. $1,620 US for a flower pot. A 12-inch wide flower pot. Very interesting indeed. Well, with these states of mind, with I'm poor, I'm rich, because of such states of mind, the poor, the rich, and the richer, they have their ways of simplicity, and their ways of simplicity in being enough. Basically, the rich person, it's enough to have. For them, it's enough having all that stuff. For the poor person, they can't get any more. For the person who has no money, and that's all they have, so they just, hopefully they try to be content with what they get. Little do they know that only one of the ways, you have the rich, the richer, and the one who doesn't have so much, of extremely little. Okay, only one of those views maintains a humility unsurpassed, and that's the one who doesn't have too much. The one only seeking a roof over their head, a little protection from the rain, some warmth for the winter, and some food when they're hungry, and or when they can't stand the hunger. Now, how is that even a point here? A rich person can be humble. I've met a lot of rich people who are very humble people. There's nothing wrong with having money at all. And, the views of money being evil, or a tool of evil. Well, everything can be a tool of evil and a tool of good. But money itself just being the root of all evil, that's false views. The people attaching and placing notions upon money and placing their whole entire faith and the whole entire world into money, basing it on money. Now that's evil. That's what takes away from people. That's not a good thing. Now, this question. Why is it that a financially destitute person seeks to receive so little? Well, it's because of their own karmic conditions. They may only have enough blessings to attain the basics of survival. They have the conditions to return to the basic idea of simplicity. Pretty much. They have no choice. But that's because they have conditions to be that way. They may not be sages, talking of all this simplicity and all this wonderfulness in the mind and all that. They don't have the sage nature in that aspect. Or you can say it's not that they don't have the sage nature. It's that they're not realizing the sage nature. They just have the conditions to be in that state of simplicity, away from the luxury. They may not be sages, but they're taking on just enough. That mentality of just enough allows for the cultivation of patience and humility, and also plants the seeds of abundance in their later years and their future lifetimes. But unless they use their financial blessings for their own fulfillment of addictions and greed, well, that's not good. So we can be begging on the street for money and food, but if we get some money and we go and waste that money, and I call it a waste, on alcohol or drugs or I don't know, then we just wasted the blessings that another person had and gave to us. We wasted it on something superficial. And that superficiality has become a mind state for those who do not have much money. But then those who have money are also playing the superficial game. Or they'll need to look pretty, need to look handsome, have the most expensive things, just to fulfill what? The idea of importance. So, if those who do not have that much money, we'll call them financially inept, they just don't have the causes to become able to sustain the modern idea of success, and or they're getting money, begging for it on the street or whatnot, and wasting it. Well, they're just wasting the blessings, obviously. In the future, they won't have those blessings, and they'll have to end up facing those people who gave them money in this life. Maybe in the future life, they'll have to face those people. And the situation isn't that pleasant. I mean, when you use someone's money and you squander it away, they invested in you. It's kind of like them investing in you. You may have had good conditions with them in the past, so they come around and give you $1. They come around and give you $20. But then we waste it. And then what happens? Sometime later, it was wasted. Now the person wants their money back. May not be in this lifetime. And they want their money back. And you don't remember, or you don't care. It's not good. In our modern time of have and have-nots, the suffering of not having is even worse compared to when living beings went free from technological dependencies. When living beings were free from technological dependencies and luxuries. The reason is that those who have feel they're worth something better, more. Those who have not feel they are not worth anything. And so those who have usually create the perception that those who don't have are useless and no good. That's not nice. But it's true. It happens a lot. This kind of perception plants the seeds of being reborn in a life of poverty and or losing one's riches in their current life, among other things. Believe it or not, but having just enough to maintain plants good roots of abundance later in one's life. The reason is because when one only has what they need, they don't seek for anything more. But if one does seek for more than what they need, in the long run, they end up losing what they have. In our world, the living beings are taught to want and lust over material things. They're taught this from childhood and are surrounded by that mentality till they die. What most people do not want to hear is that they have been coaxed into living like that. They don't want to face the fact that they've been led to gradually deteriorate their health and those of their children. They don't want to believe that there are people deliberately making society twist and turn in all directions. It's much easier to sit back and enjoy one's desires than it is to investigate the mind. It is a time where people must relearn our old trades. They must rely on skills developed over hard work. I say it's time. I say it's time to learn how to farm, learn how to sew, cook, learn how to spend time without entertainment of TV, radio, movies, iPhones and smartphones and whatever phones. And video games, nowadays the video games aren't as quote unquote innocent as they were back when I was growing up in the 80s. Video games now are almost virtual, or even more than virtual now. And there's people who just copy the video games and go out and kill people randomly just because they can do it in the video game. If you don't think it's true and you don't hear it on the news, so it's not really happening, you're wrong. There's a hell of a lot of things happening on the news or happening in the world that is not in the news. And there's a lot of things happening in the world that the news is not telling you directly or truthfully about. Yes, in America. Yes, around other countries as well. So, stay away from video games. I know it's happy and fun. When I was young, I played them and I enjoyed them. I got tired of them very quickly. But truthfully, it's nothing good comes out of these things. I say, personally, that we must all relearn how to wear simple clothing, simple footwear, if any at all. Step away from the popular and commercial, because the popular and commercial is that which hooks you in, binds you, takes control of your will. Did anyone ever think that the cost of vegetables is more expensive than meat? I have. For a few years now, I've been realizing that. I think it's unbelievable. I mean, our society is literally very backwards. Not just in the meat and vegetable area, but in a lot of other things. But I'm just taking one specific aspect. I mean, in some places, vegetables are more expensive than meat. I mean, think of this also, is that what is good for you is more expensive than that which is bad for you. So it's easier to buy unhealthy foods than to buy the healthier ones, the ones that actually bring you benefit. That's totally crazy. Totally insane. A lot of people don't like the taste of vegetables anyway. I think we should try to relearn how to eat vegetables. You know, how to accept the not so tasty foods. Because we just need to maintain the body. We don't really need to give it anything good tasting. I mean, the good taste goes to waste anyway. It's all impermanent. You know, it goes in through the mouth and comes out the other end. Nobody wants to eat it when it comes out the other end, right? So the good taste in food really was just to cover up what the food actually tastes like. And if you're one for taste, probably like your seasoning. If you really could care less what something tastes like, give yourself a test. So, what is it that this simplicity is all about? I mean, what is the simplicity that the sages talked about for centuries? What is that? It's just utilizing what is necessary for basic living. A place to cover from the rain, clothes to protect from the weather, food to warm the stomach and fill the stomach, shoes to protect the feet, perhaps. Some people don't like wearing shoes. Anything else is just excessive. Really. In the old days, people had mansions, some, and people had horse and carriage, and some didn't. People had maids to wait on them, some didn't. We have the same thing now, except our horse and carriage is a $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 car or more. I feel our world may once again go back to that lifestyle. The lifestyle of only relying on what is necessary. But it could be a long, long time. And if it were to happen any time within the next 20 years, 50 years, I think it would be a very bitter transition. This is why cultivation is so important. You know? Don't spend your money on extravagant vacations. Just sit home and cultivate with the family. Educate each other on the importance of investigating the mind, strengthening your energy, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. You know, forget the TV. It doesn't serve as a technology in the people's best interest anymore. I mean, those, like we talked about before, who are in control of our popular media outlets are doing more harm than good. Radio interrupts the mental waves, and so does TV. Movies and TV shows interfere with one's emotional stability, causing desires of lust, anger, hatred, jealousy, love, false thinking, and all of that influences the mind very, very deeply. Generally, love is good, right? And on the other hand, the opposite of love is hate. Love is based in relativity. But there is something we call unconditional love. But that love is not the lust and desire-filled love. It's not the emotional love. It's a compassionate regard. So if people can actually simply abide with the conditions of the world, not want, but utilize, they may find a peace that was once the mind of this world's ancestors. But I'm not talking about 500 years ago ancestors. I'm talking about thousands of years ago. How can I just say thousands of years ago? Well, in our most recent histories of maybe 3,000 years, recording of modern history or recording of world history for the last 3,000 years, we see the same nonsensical wars and problems with society and people. We have them today. A 100-year war, you know. We have many, many wars in our world. We have much famine in our world. We have much craziness, extremes on both ends, jumping all over the place. But I truly wonder what life here on this planet would be like, or was like 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 20,000, 40,000 years ago. I want to know. Wouldn't you want to know? I mean, just because it wasn't around in the last 100 years doesn't make it useless. Just means people are focusing on one small little thing, one small little part of the actual whole entire cosmos. And what are we doing with that one part? We're kind of draining it out. Now it's on its last legs and we're all flipping out because economies are destroyed. You know, society is unstable. Family, home life, family life. Families are divorcing or killing each other. It's like a divorce. They're hurting each other. Families break up because really ignorant ideas of child care in our laws. The world is nuts. To me, the world is nuts. But it's not the world, the planet. It's what the people have done with the world. The people have done with their world, then influencing it on other people's world. What's funny is that most people have their views, and if another person doesn't agree with their views, then the person who doesn't agree is considered crazy and ridiculed, looked down on. Other people are made to see this person as being useless or not having skill or not being worth anything. And what does that do? It just empowers ego. That is not the idea of simplicity at all. That's not simple. It's hard to maintain lies, actually. I believe the world will go back to a simple idea, but it's not anytime soon. If it were to be soon, it would just not be very easy. We'll go back to something that's not fancy at all. Nothing extremely expensive, just plain old maintenance and service to people. The cultivation of the way is quite simple. It only requires what it already has. Basically, it's what we all came into and will leave with in this world. So investigate that mind. Don't waste time. Thank you very much. And look forward to having you listening to our next shows. Have a good day or night or wherever you are in this world. Make sure it's something you like. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Expedient Means with Lynn Away on Tom Monk Radio. Please be sure to join us next week as Lynn discusses the call to your empowerment. And we'll end with a quote here. However many holy words you read, however many you speak, what good will they do if you do not act upon them? and that is from the Sakyamuni Buddha.